database and Sequelize. Sequelize is an object relational mapping for Postgres, MariaDB, MySQL, Oracle, and other databases as specified in its documentation. It provides easy-to-use APIs to interact with DB. These APIs generate actual SQL queries for database interaction. For this video, we will set up our database using Docker. Docker will be used to package our application with all the packages and resources like the database our application needs to run properly. With this said, we will need Docker installed on our system. I would advise installing Docker Desktop because it ships with the Docker suite. At the point of recording this video, you can download Docker Desktop from the link displayed on the screen. If you do not have Docker installed, please pause this video and go to the web address, download and follow the installation procedure. Once you have Docker installed, we will go ahead to use Compose. Docker Compose is a tool for defining and running multi-container application. In our case, the database, our application, and tools like pgadmin, a database client to view our database tables and records. First, we set up our application to run on a Docker container. To do this, we will need to create a Dockerfile. Dockerfile will contain a sequence of instructions on how to set up and run our application. So let's dive right in. Every Dockerfile needs to start with a from command, which initializes the build stage and sets the base for subsequent instructions. Since we are running a node application, we can base our app off a node image, which is node LTS Alpine. Node LTS Alpine is the latest long-time support node version based on the compact Linux distribution. Next, we will set a working directory usr/src/app. After that, we copy our package.json and package lock.json to this working directory. We then install all dependencies using run npm install. Finally, we copy everything from the root of our application folder into the working directory. So if you look closely here, you see I have a docker ignore file. So it contains all the path to all the files I need to ignore while using Docker, which includes the node modules, git ignore, config, Dockerfile, Docker YAML files, and of course the README. With this configuration, we now have our build context required for our Docker Compose configuration. To configure our Compose file, we will need to create a Docker Compose YAML file. We will be using the version 3. In the Compose file, we will start by defining the list of services, that is containers. First, we have the Postgres service for our database. And the first option we'll be configuring is the container name. Here we'll still call it Postgres. So this specifies the name we want the container to be identified with. Next, we'll have the image, which is Postgres. This is the base image of this particular container, which will be pulled from Docker Hub. Next, to specify the ports. (5, 4, 3, 2, 5432. So the first port indicates a published port, as a publicly exposed port. Second is the target port, as the port inside the container. Next, to specify the volumes /data /pg data :/data /pg data. This is used to store persistent data outside our container, and this outlive the container itself. So the first part of the volume specifies the source path or volume, while the second part is the target, which specifies the part where the volume is mounted on the container. Accessing the database would require some credentials, so let's specify with an environment variable file. So we have the env file option, and here we'll say the .env. Let's create the .env and add the desired credentials we need. Here I've created the .env file at the root of our application, and I've added different environment variable credentials. So if you notice here we'll have the host Postgres. It needs to match with the container name for our Postgres database, which is this. So I'll go ahead and pause the video, and you will notice that I have added two more services, the online payment service and the pgadmin service, and I can easily collapse these services using this caret here. In the online payment service, I have added the depends on configuration option. So this option ensures that Postgres is started before the online payment service when we start the services, and when the services are stopped, the online payment service is stopped before the Postgres service. Next, we'll have a build service, which specifies the path to the Dockerfile for the build. Also, in the pgadmin service, we have introduced a link configuration option. This is similar to the depends on option earlier explained. You also notice that I've created a network, right? And you can see that at the bottom of every service. So at the top tier of the Docker Compose configuration, I have a networks that have a driver, and if I go back to the Postgres service, I've also included that here. I just had to connect all of them to a particular network and specify that. So to test our Docker configuration, we'll run Docker Compose to build and start our application. So let's try that out. So to run Docker, we must ensure that our Docker desktop is running, like you can see on my screen here. You can run your Docker desktop. Once it's running, I'll just move over to the terminal, right, and run the command docker compose up. So once I hit enter, first start pulling the Postgres image from Docker Hub, which is a repository that holds different images, like the node image, the Docker image, and different images people can actually have. Their public repositories. So I'll pause the video and come back once it's done. The download is almost completed, so it might take just a few minutes depending on network connectivity strength and availability from Docker Hub. So once it downloads the binaries for Postgres, it moves to build our online payment image. So it starts with going through each of the commands in the Dockerfile. Next, it has moved to pgadmin. It has started pulling the binaries for pgadmin from Docker Hub. So it's almost done pulling all the binaries for pgadmin. So now it's creating the different services. So first it created Postgres service. Next, they created the online payment service, right? And then progress initiated. So just go through the logs on the console, and then you see that our server is running on port 3000. Ensure that in your .env files you have these two environment variables, pgadmin default email and pgadmin default password added. So I had to stop the container, the Docker compose, and added that before rerunning it again with Docker compose up to ensure that all our services are running. Hey guys, in this part of the video we have been able to set up our application, Postgres and pgadmin all running as Docker services. In the second part of this video, we will connect our application to Postgres database instance using Sequelize. Kindly subscribe, like, share, and turn on post notification to get notified when we post new videos, and encourage the channel to create more feature focused contents.